Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, July 1st. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Texas game in 60 days, the game against Michigan in 151 days. If you're planning your next event, make it unforgettable with Grateful Griddle, Columbus's favorite food truck, serving up smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, and good vibes. Book your catering today at GratefulGriddleOH.com. We are 3 weeks exactly away from the start of Big Ten Media Days. And on Monday, we found out which 3 players the Ohio State Buckeyes are bringing to Las Vegas for Big Ten Media Days. And we're going to be talking about that with our buddy Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com, because a lot of times those guys who end up showing up at Big Ten Media Days end up also showing up on the list of team captains when those are announced. Tony, 3 names going to Las Vegas. Feels like this may be a little bit preview, and we're going to be talking about the captains on today's show. So let people know who will be joining us in Las Vegas in just 3 weeks.
Yes, the Ohio State contingent going to Las Vegas. Linebacker Sonny Styles, safety Caleb Downs, wide receiver Jeremiah Smith. And I was surprised. Yes, these are the 3 guys that should go, right? Like, these are the 3 guys that people want to talk to. But I was pretty surprised to see Jeremiah Smith on there, because I cannot remember a sophomore ever going for Ohio State. Even when JT Barrett was a redshirt sophomore and a returning starting quarterback, he didn't go. But like, this was a bit of a surprise to me, in that the guys that the people would want to actually talk to are the same guys that are going. It's a brand new day, Tom.
It is. And, there's some stuff that's different this year for sure. One of them is Ohio State's never sent a sophomore to Big Ten Media Days, or hasn't for a long time anyway. Ohio State hasn't had a sophomore like this for quite a while as well. So that's one thing that's different. You tend to have the stoic senior leaders on the team. Those are often the guys who go, and, not necessarily the flashiest names, but the guys who are, have been the good soldiers and stuck it out for 4 years or 5 years, and, sort of stoic veteran leaders. And those are the guys who typically go. There just aren't that many of those on this year's team, because you got to remember, last year's team was loaded with those guys. You could have set 12 guys on last year's team, loaded with fourth-year senior leadership types. This year, it is a younger team. It is a very new team, a new-look team. Some of the bigger names on both sides of the ball are transfers or are first-year starters. So, a sophomore, a true sophomore who has 1,200 or whatever yards to his name, well, that counts as a veteran on this year's team, even though he was in high school 18 months ago. So if we, I think there is a pretty decent correlation between guys who have gone to this event and guys who have ended up being captains, because these are sort of leadership roles and guys being rewarded for taking team leadership roles. I think I look at these 3 guys, and it would be very unusual for a sophomore to be a captain. I also don't know that I want to ever get into the business of saying, Jeremiah Smith can't do that. That feels like that is a losing bet. What do you think? Are all 3 of these guys ultimately team captains this year?
Well, Tom, if you're like, I don't think Jeremiah Smith should be a team captain, you are the guy that is the one baseball voter who doesn't put the automatic guy in. Like, Hank Aaron was good, but let's just. I need 1 more year to be convinced that he should be in, and that's kind of the way it is with Jeremiah Smith, because he's a 2-time Iron Buckeye. I judge maturity in touchdown catches, and he's 15 mature, basically. Like, everything that you could want from a player, he is, and that's the on-field, that's the off-field, it's the preparation. So all of these qualities you want in your captain, in your captains, you see there. And so it's like, yeah, he's a sophomore, but even the upperclassmen hold him in high regard and look up to him and realize, okay, because he might be the highest paid player on the team. I don't think nobody is bothered by that. It's like, what has Jeremiah Smith done to earn this money? It's like, well, he's got highlights everywhere. You've seen it. Like, you see the work, you see the Iron Buckeye, you see this, you see the practices, you see all of this, and nobody begrudges him anything. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see how the voting turns out. And, in years past where they've had, 6 or 7 or 8 captains or whatever, I wonder if, do they go back to that and get away from the 4 captains? Because, like, yes, it's young, so maybe we need more to encapsulate that role? Or is it like, yeah, but we're kind of getting into the weeds of who those 8 are going to be.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because I think you've got a couple guys. The other 2 guys. Before we move into that, let's just real quickly touch on the other 2 guys who are kind of the two free spaces on the bingo card. 4th year, yes, somehow 4th year linebacker Sonny Styles, who feels like he was just an early enrollee like 18 months ago and is now going to be a senior this year. And Caleb Downs, who is very much, he was last year's version of he's only a sophomore, but boy, he's, probably being compensated fairly well. And no one seems to have any question about why, because you have the on-field performance. You also have all the off-field, putting in the hard work kind of stuff with him. He's in that Jeremiah Smith group where it's just, I think the Jeremiah Smith group is a size of 2, a population of 2, but those are the 2 guys. So I think, that's a guy who I think is sort of a free space on the bingo card here as well. You've got on the defensive side of the ball, like unquestionably, these are the 2 guys who I think to me are going to be the guys there. I don't know that you need a 3rd guy there. If you want to have one, that's fine. On the offensive side of the ball, Jeremiah Smith, we'll see. He has typically not been the loud voice kind of leader. He's been the kind of lead by example kind of leader. Maybe making him a captain sort of almost pushes him into being the loud voice kind of leader. The really interesting question to me is, if they do go with just 4, who's the 4th guy? And, you mentioned Iron Buckeye earlier, and I wonder if the Iron Buckeye is kind of the tip-off on who the other guy on the offensive side of the ball might be.
And I'm going to go with Austin Sierveld here, who Ryan Day said in the spring, I don't know where he's going to be, but he's going to be starting on the offensive line. And I think from talking with people recently, he's just continued to be a standout. So I think you're talking about another young guy. He's a 3rd-year guy. And so is Caleb Downs. And so this is going to be, if it were to be Austin Sierveld, or you could also, Carson Hinsman was a former Iron Buckeye as well. And you'd love to have your starting center be a captain as well, because they basically are a captain of the offense, having to do what they do. But if I'm picking one guy at this point, I'm probably going like 60-40 Sierveld Hinsman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels like, just let's talk for a minute about the way they typically do this. You're not typically going to have, if you have 2 captains, you're not typically going to have 2 safeties or 2 linebackers. You're going to have guys in some different rooms. So you're not probably going to have 2 wide receivers on offense. So you're probably going to have someone from another group. You don't know who the starting quarterback is yet. And maybe the starting quarterback gets made a captain later, or, becomes a 5th captain later once you know who the starting quarterback is. Your running backs are a first-year starter in James Peoples and a transfer in C.J. Donaldson. So those are kind of the top 2 guys there. Your tight ends, could it be, Max Clare is a transfer? It would be a big surprise if you had a transfer become a captain before his first game, but I guess it's possible. Will Kazmarek, is a possibility. He's a senior this year, but again, was a transfer, only his 2nd year at Ohio State. Offensive line, Ethan Onyeonwa was a transfer. Tager Shabola is a possibility. He's been a starter for a couple of years. Luke Montgomery, kind of a first-year starter. He kind of was a starter last year. There's a little bit of gray area there. But yeah, I think to me, if it's 4 guys, it's the 3 guys you bring into Big Ten Media Days. And as you said, I think there's an argument for Carson Hinsman or Austin Sierveld there. And you could, there are arguments for plenty of other guys as well. But what do you think is the most likely number, and who do you think it's going to be? Do you think it's 4, or do you think it's more than 4?
I could see it being 6 to get a guy like Carnell Tate in there, because like you said, if it's 4, you don't necessarily want 2 receivers, that's just, so I could see it going 6, and that way you could reward defensively like a Davis Igbinosun or a Kenyatta Jackson. Because again, I go back to the NFL Combine, the defensive lineman there, we're talking about the leadership of Kenyatta Jackson. So something like that. And he's a 4th-year guy. So I wouldn't be shocked if it's 6, just because maybe the votes are more spread out and they aren't as heavily weighted maybe they're not as top heavy over the course of, like just 4 guys. So I'll say 6, but 4 seemed to work out last year, right?
Yeah, things turned out okay for the 2024 Ohio State football team. There is a hot take for you, but The way they do it is it'll typically be, is there a big drop-off? It's a little like the Heisman voting. If there's a big drop-off between 3 and 4, only 3 guys are going to get invited to New York for the Heisman. If there's a big drop-off between 4 and 5, 4 guys are getting invited. If there's a big drop-off between 4 and 5 in the voting, you're probably going to have 4 captains. If there's a big drop-off happens between 5 and 6 or 6 and 7, that's probably where the cut line is, to use a golf term. But that's so we'll find out. This is more of a fall camp thing usually. We're probably a little bit away from that, but the announcement of the guys headed to Big Ten Media Days certainly is the first kind of big tell here beyond the, hey, Caleb Downs, you could probably have written that one in Sharpie about middle of last season. Caleb Downs is going to be a captain in 2025. So you can now write it's probably in, you can go over the Sharpie, trace it over again, and write his name again. And then we'll let you know for sure when that announcement gets made. But between now and then, there's going to be a lot to talk about. It is a busy recruiting week for Ohio State. Got some potential commitments coming a little later on this week. Got a lot of other players making decisions in the coming weeks. And then, yes, 3 weeks from today, the Buckeyes will be in Las Vegas for Big Ten Media Days. Going to be a lot to talk about there. Very, very interesting year in the Big Ten. Can James Franklin and Penn State finally get over the hump? Can Oregon finally get over the hump in the postseason? All sorts of questions, plus lots of questions around the Ohio State football team as well. We'll be talking about all of that for you at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That's where Tony, Kevin, and I cover the team. Mark and Berm cover recruiting. We got our whole team of X's and O's gurus there as well, all to make you a smarter football fan. That is all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We hope to see you there. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.